Welcome to Beit Yisrael International's Voice of Torah podcast. Today, Parashat Vayakhel is more than the construction of a Mishkan. It's a blueprint for divine presence in our lives. With host agents Abraham and Sarah, Moses gathers Vayakhel, Bnei Yisrael, teaching that unity creates a dwelling for Hashem. Shabbat reminds us to sanctify time, and the Mishkan's construction, led by Betzalel and Oholiav, shows how to elevate the physical into holiness. We too are builders through Torah, mitzvot, and acts of kindness, preparing for the ultimate revelation of Hashem in the Third Beit HaMikdash. Just as the Mishkan stood as a testimony to Hashem's dwelling among us, so too our lives must reflect His light. May we merit to build our own inner sanctuary and prepare for the final Geulah, when Hashem's presence will be fully revealed in the world. May we merit to transform our lives into a sanctuary for Hashem's presence. Thank you for listening to the Voice of Torah podcast. Shabbat Shalom from Beit Yisrael International.
All right, get ready, because today we're diving into something really fascinating.
Yeah.
The Mishkan.
Okay.
But we're not just talking about it as some ancient tent in the desert.
Right.
This is a deep dive to Jewish mystical thought.
Yeah.
We're going to see the Mishkan as blueprint.
The blueprint.
Yeah. For the soul and for the entire universe itself. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah, that's a big claim.
It is. But we've got some amazing sources to help us unpack all this. We're looking at teachings from Beit Yisrael International.
Okay.
And we'll also be drawing on some notes by Gadi Ephraim.
Awesome. I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, and trust me, there are some serious aha moments ahead.
I believe it. There's so much wisdom packed into that ancient structure. It's incredible.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to uncover today, the Mishkan. Like, how does this thing connect to personal growth?
Yeah.
Divine unity, even the coming of the Messiah, all that and more.
I think people are going to be really surprised by what they learn. This is going to be mind-blowing.
Okay, so first things first, you're telling me the Mishkan is like a microcosm of everything. Like, come on, really?
No, it sounds like a pretty bold statement.
It does.
But think about it. The Mishkan, its structure, it mirrors creation itself. The creation of the universe, the structure of the human's soul, and the cosmic order. It's all there, all connected.
All right, so let's break this down a bit. The Mishkan, it was built according to, 10 divine commands, right?
Right.
And those 10 commands, those actually correspond to the 10 Sephirah. Now, for anyone who needs a little reminder,
Yeah.
the Sephirah, those are like emanations of God's creative energy.
Exactly.
But here's the really wild part.
Okay.
The world, the whole world, it was also created with 10 utterances.
Right.
So, I mean, you got to admit, that's pretty amazing. Coincidence? I don't think so.
It's way too perfect to be just a coincidence.
Yeah.
The number 10, it's not random. It points to this deeper idea that everything is interconnected.
I like that.
And that's reflected in the Mishkan too. See, the physical world, it's a reflection of the spiritual. Everything has meaning. Everything has a purpose.
Okay, so if everything in the Mishkan has meaning, walk me through some of the key parts. We've got the Holy of Holies,
Right.
the menorah, the shulchan. What's going on with all those elements? Like, what's the deeper significance?
So the Holy of Holies, that's the innermost chamber, right?
Yeah.
That represents the highest levels of divine wisdom. It's like the source of all creation. And then you've got the menorah.
Okay.
Now that symbolizes illumination, understanding, and those are essential for spiritual growth.
Okay. Makes sense.
And then there's the shulchan, the table with the showbread. Now that represents sustenance, nourishment for the soul.
Oh, interesting.
It is. It's like spiritual food.
Okay, but what about the outer courtyard? That's where all the, practical stuff happens, right?
You got it. The outer courtyard, that's where we take all that inner wisdom, that illumination, that nourishment, and we bring it into the physical world through action, through service, through kindness.
And earlier you mentioned this word, tikkun. What does that actually mean?
So tikkun, that literally means repair.
Repair.
Yeah. And in Jewish mysticism, it's this idea of cosmic repair, bringing harmony to a universe that's become, fragmented.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And Gadi Ephraim, in his notes, he actually talks about the Mishkan's role in this tikkun process.
Yeah.
It's about taking those fallen sparks of divine light,
Yeah.
and elevating them, bringing them back up to restore balance to creation.
So we've got this structure, It's incredibly symbolic, right? Like all
Yeah.
these layers of meaning pointing to this cosmic repair.
Yeah.
But who designed this thing? Who built it?
Well, that would be Betzalel. Truly a remarkable figure. He wasn't just a skilled craftsman.
Yeah.
He had this profound connection to divine wisdom.
And his name itself is pretty mind-blowing, Betzalel. In the shadow of God. I mean, wow.
It's amazing, right? Like, that's how close he was to the divine.
Yeah.
And the sages, they teach that he could actually perceive the divine blueprints of creation.
Wow.
I know. And get this. Some even say he understood the secrets of creation through the Hebrew letters.
Wow. Talk about a deep understanding.
I know, right? It's incredible. It's like he wasn't just building a physical structure. He was channeling divine energy and wisdom into physical form.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Like a conduit between heaven and earth.
Exactly. And that actually makes me wonder, if he could tap into that level of wisdom, does that mean that we can too, in our own way?
That's a great question. And you know what? Beit Yisrael International actually teaches that the Mishkan, it's not just a blueprint for the universe, it's also a model for the human soul.
What? So, like, we each have our own inner Mishkan.
Exactly.
Okay, I am intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, so think about it like this. If the Holy of Holies, if that represents the highest levels of divine wisdom,
Yeah.
in our inner Mishkan, that would represent our innermost selves, the Yekida, that spark of divinity within each of us.
Yeah.
It's where we connect to truth and wisdom.
That makes sense. So then where do the menorah and the shulchan fit in? Like those symbols of illumination and nourishment, do we have those in our inner Mishkan too?
Absolutely. The
Yeah.
inner chamber with the menorah and the shulchan, that corresponds to our heart and emotions. It's where we cultivate love, awe, and balance. It's what nourishes our soul.
I see. So just like the Mishkan needs light and nourishment to function, so do our souls. That's really cool.
It is. And what about the outer courtyard, that place of action? What's that in our inner Mishkan? Well, that represents how we take all those inner qualities and we express them in the world through our actions. It's about refining the physical through mitzvot.
Mitzvot.
Yeah, those acts of kindness and service. We bring that inner light out into the world.
So it's like through Torah and mitzvot, through living a life, aligned with divine will, we're each building our own Mishkan.
Exactly.
And we're transforming ourselves into a dwelling place for God. That's a powerful concept.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's not just about some ancient structure in the desert. It's about understanding our own potential
Yeah.
for holiness and connection with the divine.
It makes you think, do you think Betzalel, with his understanding of the Mishkan's blueprint, do you think he was aware of this inner dimension too?
That is a fascinating question.
Yeah.
And it makes you realize this journey of personal transformation, of building our own inner Mishkan, this has been going on for centuries.
Absolutely. And the fact that the physical Mishkan was only temporary, that brings up another interesting point. Is there something beyond just the physical structure?
You hit the nail on the head. The Mishkan, while temporary, it points to the ultimate Beit HaMikdash, the temple in Jerusalem.
Okay.
And the Midrash actually says that Betzalel's wisdom, it will return. When the third temple descends from heaven, fully formed.
Wow. So Betzalel's wisdom is connected to the Messianic era.
Exactly. And the Arizal, a prominent Kabbalist, he actually explains that Betzalel's soul, it's linked to the soul of Mashiach ben David.
Wow.
They're both builders, but builders of divine reality.
I see. So just like Betzalel used God's blueprint to create the Mishkan,
Yeah.
the Messiah, he's going to establish a world perfectly aligned with God's will.
That's right. It's not just about a physical building. It's about creating a world where God's presence is felt everywhere.
Yeah.
Fulfilling that prophecy that the earth will be filled with the knowledge of God as waters cover the sea.
And that brings us to another really important theme that runs through all of this, the theme of unity. The Mishkan wasn't just built by one person. It required the whole Israelite community.
Exactly. And the Zohar, that central text in Jewish mysticism, it highlights this connection between the parts of the Mishkan, the human body, and the unity of Israel.
Go on. I'm hooked. Tell me more about this.
Okay, so the Zohar explains that each part of the Mishkan corresponds to a part of the human body. So like the Ark, which held the tablets of the covenant, that represents the head and wisdom. The menorah, that symbolizes the eyes and perception. The shulchan represents sustenance. And the mizbeach, the altar, that corresponds to the heart and devotion.
So it's like the Mishkan is a model for the human being and the unity of its parts that reflects the ideal state of the Jewish people.
Yes. wholeness, and interconnectedness.
I love it.
And each vessel in the Mishkan, it had its specific role.
Right.
And they all had to work together for the structure to function.
That's a powerful metaphor.
Right. It's a powerful metaphor for how we, as individuals and as a community, need to function. We each have a role to play in creating a world filled with God's presence.
And speaking of roles, there's that powerful quote from the Torah, "They shall make for me a sanctuary, and I shall dwell within them."
Ooh, I like that one.
It's a good one, right? It reminds us that God doesn't just dwell in a building, but within each person, dedicated to serving a higher purpose.
And that's where the 613 mitzvot come into play.
Oh, yeah.
The sages teach that those mitzvot, those correspond to the 613 parts of the Mishkan and the 613 parts of the human body.
So you're saying that each mitzvah we perform, it's like aligning ourselves with a specific aspect of the Mishkan.
Exactly. And a specific part of ourselves.
Wow.
And just like everyone, from the wealthiest to the most humble, contributed something to the Mishkan's construction.
Yeah.
We all have something to offer, no matter how small.
And Beit Yisrael International teaches that it's about dedicating all of our resources.
Resources.
Our wealth, our skills, our wisdom to a higher purpose.
Okay.
When we do that, we transform those things into vessels for holiness.
So it's like taking something ordinary and making it extraordinary, like how our ancestors donated simple materials that became part of this grand holy structure.
Precisely. And Gad Ephraim, he emphasizes that when we use our resources for something bigger than ourselves, we actually become part of the divine plan for redemption.
It's all about aligning our actions with a higher will.
Exactly. And that's where the connection between the Mishkan and the mitzvot becomes so clear. Each mitzvah is like a mini Mishkan.
A mini Mishkan.
Yeah, a way of bringing holiness into the world, one action at a time.
It's not about blindly following rules.
Right.
It's about understanding the deeper meaning behind our actions and how they contribute to this larger purpose, like those who built the Mishkan.
Exactly. And that brings us back to this idea of unity. The Mishkan wasn't just a random collection of objects. It was carefully designed. Every element worked together in perfect harmony.
And that's the lesson for us. The world needs us to play our part, to create that same harmony, that same sense of interconnectedness that was in the Mishkan.
It's a reminder that we're all connected, that our actions have ripple effects way beyond ourselves.
What we do matters. And the Mishkan is proof of that. It's a message of hope. If we focus on building our own inner Mishkan and contributing to the greater good, we can make a difference, a real difference in the world.
It really is. That's the legacy of the Mishkan. It's a testament to the power of unity, purpose, dedicating ourselves to something bigger than ourselves, a vision of a world filled with God's presence, all creation unified in harmony. Powerful, wouldn't you say?
It really is. Makes you think, if the Mishkan is all about holiness and reflecting God's light, then what does it actually mean to be holy? Like, how do we cultivate that in our own lives?
Welcome back. We're diving even deeper into the Mishkan today.
It's amazing how much depth and symbolism are packed into this, seemingly simple structure.
I know. It's mind-blowing. And we've only just scratched the surface. We talked about how it's a blueprint for the universe, the soul.
Yeah.
Even the coming of the Messiah.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to explore.
I have a feeling we're only getting started.
Absolutely. One thing that really stands out to me is how the Mishkan, even though it was temporary, foreshadows something so profound.
Okay.
The unity of Israel and the final redemption.
So we're not just talking about everyone being in the same place,
Right.
Like physically. There's a deeper meaning here.
Right. It's about a deeper, more spiritual unity. The sages teach that in the Messianic era, the people of Israel, they'll function as one unified divine structure, kind of like the Mishkan itself.
Whoa. So like a giant interconnected spiritual Mishkan made up of all the souls of Israel. Is that what we're talking about?
That's a great way to visualize it. And Rabbi Chaim Vital, a prominent Kabbalist,
Okay.
he explains that the Messiah, he's like the head of this cosmic body. He's the one who unifies all the souls, brings them to this perfected state.
Wow. So the Messiah isn't just a political or military leader. He's someone who brings about this incredible spiritual unity.
It's a whole different way of understanding the Messianic era.
Right. Totally. And I've heard that the Baal HaTanya, the founder of Shabbat, takes this idea even further.
He does. He teaches that the Messiah will actually complete the construction of this divine Mishkan,
Okay.
revealing the hidden oneness of all creation.
Hold on. That's a big claim. Are you saying that all of history is leading up to this moment of, like, ultimate unity embodied in the Mishkan?
That's the idea. And get this, the final Beit HaMikdash, the ultimate temple, it won't even be built by human hands. It's going to be built by God himself.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
Yeah.
So the Mishkan built by Betzalel, it was like a training ground,
Yeah.
a model to help us grasp this concept of ultimate unity.
Exactly. It's all part of a larger plan, a cosmic unfolding of God's will. You know, this whole idea of unity and everyone contributing, it makes me think about how everyone donated something to the Mishkan.
Yeah, no matter how small. Is there a connection there?
Definitely. The Torah emphasizes that every person, rich or poor, they all contributed. It teaches us that everyone has a role to play. We're all building a holy world together.
And it's not just about giving money. It's about so much more.
You're right. Bnei Yisrael International teaches that it's about dedicating all of our resources,
Alrighty.
our wealth, our skills, our wisdom, all of it, to a higher purpose. When we do that, we transform those things into vessels for holiness.
It's like taking something ordinary, something simple, and making it extraordinary. Like when our ancestors donated those materials,
Yeah,
and they became part of this grand, holy structure.
precisely. And Gadi Ephraim, he really emphasizes this. When we use our resources for a purpose greater than ourselves,
Yeah,
we become part of the divine plan.
we become part of the divine plan for redemption.
Exactly. It's aligning our actions with a higher will. And that's where the connection between the Mishkan and the mitzvot becomes so clear.
Oh yeah, how so?
Each mitzvah, it's like a miniature Mishkan,
A miniature Mishkan.
a way of bringing holiness into the world, one action at a time.
So it's not just about blindly following the rules.
Right.
It's about understanding the deeper meaning behind our actions and how they connect to something bigger, like the people who built the Mishkan, right?
Exactly. And that brings us back to unity. The Mishkan wasn't just a random jumble of objects. It was carefully designed, each element working together in perfect harmony.
And that's a lesson for us.
A big one.
The world needs us to create that same harmony.
The same interconnectedness that was embodied in the Mishkan.
Right, is a reminder that we are all interconnected, that our actions have ripple effects way beyond ourselves.
What we do matters. And the Mishkan is a testament to that. It's a message of hope.
Yeah.
If we focus on building our own inner Mishkan,
And contribute to the greater good.
we can make a difference in the world.
I love that.
It's the legacy of the Mishkan. It's a testament to the power of unity, of purpose, of dedicating ourselves to something bigger than ourselves. A vision of a world filled with God's presence, all creation unified in harmony. Quite a powerful vision, wouldn't you say?
It really is, and it makes you think. If the Mishkan is all about holiness and reflecting God's light, then what does it actually mean to be holy? How do we cultivate that in our own lives? So we've been exploring the Mishkan and all these layers of meaning, right? But one question keeps coming back to me. What does it actually mean to be holy? It's something we talk about a lot, but what's it really look like?
Oh, that's such a great question. And I think the Mishkan gives us a really powerful answer. You see, it's not just about, like, being good or even just following the rules. It's about something much bigger. It's about becoming a vessel for the divine, reflecting God's light into the world.
So it's not about separating ourselves from the world.
No, not at all.
It's about elevating it, bringing that sense of holiness into everything we do.
Yes, exactly. And the Mishkan, it shows us how that happens, this process of sanctification, both individually and collectively. Just like each vessel in the Mishkan had to be purified, dedicated to a holy purpose,
Right.
so too do we have to purify ourselves, our thoughts, our words, our actions.
And just like the Mishkan was built through the efforts of the whole community,
Right.
our journey towards holiness, it depends on our connection to others.
Absolutely. It's about supporting each other, inspiring each other along the way. It's a reminder that we're not in this alone. We're all part of something bigger, something much larger. Like, imagine a cosmic tapestry, right? Woven together by the threads of our individual efforts. And speaking of journeys, think about the Mishkan itself. It was constantly being taken apart and put back together as the Israelites traveled.
Yeah.
It was a portable sanctuary, a symbol that God's presence was always with them.
That's such a powerful metaphor for our own spiritual lives.
Yeah.
We're never really finished building that inner Mishkan, are we?
Never. It's a constant process, always evolving, growing, refining, returning to our center.
And just like that portable sanctuary represented God's presence, always with them wherever they went, we can carry that sense of holiness within us too, no matter where we are or what challenges we face.
It's true. God's presence isn't limited to one specific place or time. It's accessible to us, always. We just need to know how to tap into it.
We're diving into the link between the Mishkan, Shabbat, and the very act of creation itself.
Yeah, some deep waters here.
Definitely. You shared this source with me. Mishkan, Shabbat, and creation, a cycle of divine manifestation. And it looks like Beit Yisrael International and Gadia Frame Notes, they've got some really intriguing perspectives to offer on this.
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating is that we'll discover those 39 melachot, the actions that we refrain from on Shabbat, they're not just arbitrary rules.
Right.
They actually provide a framework, a way of understanding the divine blueprint of creation.
Okay, so you've already piqued my curiosity.
Sure.
So we're talking about this, like cosmic cycle of divine manifestation, where building, as represented by the Mishkan, and resting, symbolized by Shabbat, are somehow intertwined.
Yeah.
So where do we even begin to unpack all of that?
Well, I think the Torah itself gives us a pretty big clue. The commandment to observe Shabbat, it's given right before the detailed instructions for building the Mishkan.
Okay, so right there in the text, we see the connection.
Exactly. And get the same Hebrew word, malaka, is used for both the work of creation and the work that's prohibited on Shabbat.
So it's not just a coincidence. These two concepts are intentionally linked.
Exactly. And the Mishkan itself, it's presented as this kind of microcosm of creation, reflecting that divine order, but on a smaller, more tangible scale.
So the Mishkan is like a model, in a way, for understanding the grand scheme of creation.
Precisely. But to really grasp this connection, we need to go a little deeper. We have to move beyond that simple translation of malaka, work.
Right, because it's more nuanced than that.
Yeah, it's more about those purposeful, transformative actions that alter reality.
So it's not just about, like, physical exertion. It's about wielding, I guess you could say, creative power to actually change something's essential nature. Like, I'm thinking, if I'm understanding this right, like kneading dough on Shabbat, it's not just about tiring myself out. It's about taking those simple ingredients and actually fundamentally changing their form.
You got it. It's about channeling this creative energy in a way that sort of mirrors that divine act of creation.
But wait, Shabbat is about withdrawing that creative force, recognizing that ultimately, we're not the ones in control. Isn't that kind of a paradox? I mean, we're built to create, to shape the world around us, and yet Shabbat asks us to relinquish that control.
That's the beauty of this whole cycle. Kabbalistically speaking, Malasha is about human control, while Shabbat represents acknowledging Hashem as the sole creator. It's this dance between manifestation and withdrawal, action and surrender.
So how does the figure of Betzalel, the chief artisan of the Mishkan, how does he fit into all of this? I mean, the guy had to have been pretty creative to build something so intricate and, imbued with such spiritual significance.
Oh, Betzalel, yeah. He wasn't just skilled. He was chosen because he possessed wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And those qualities, they mirror the very qualities that are attributed to Hashem during creation.
So he was operating on a different level.
Absolutely. In fact, the sages teach that Betzalel had an almost supernatural understanding of creation itself.
Wait, hold on. Are we saying that he could manipulate the very building blocks of reality? That's some serious cosmic power. What did he actually do that was so special?
Well, he knew how to combine the letters of creation.
The letters. Okay, I definitely need some more explanation on that one.
This concept is pretty mind-blowing, so let's break it down. Okay, so think of it like this. In Jewish mysticism, each Hebrew letter, it's like a vessel for divine energy.
So they're not just symbols on a page.
Right, they're like the actual building blocks of reality.
Wow. Okay, so it's like each letter contains a specific spiritual frequency or vibration, and Betzalel understood how to arrange these letters, these building blocks, in a way that actually brought the Mishkan into being.
Yeah, he was coding reality itself. That's a great way to put it.
That's incredible. And this knowledge, it wasn't just for building a physical structure, right?
Right.
It had deeper implications for humanity's spiritual evolution. I mean, this source even connects Betzalel and the Mishkan to the Messianic age. It's like they're all part of this larger narrative about humanity tapping into its full creative potential.
But doing so in alignment with divine will.
Exactly. And that brings us back to those 39 melachot. They're not just this list of restrictions, but more like a spiritual map.
Each one corresponding to a specific aspect of creation.
And by refraining from these actions on Shabbat, we're not just resting physically, but we're consciously relinquishing control, allowing the natural divine order to just unfold.
You got it.
So each melacha is sort of like representing a way in which we as humans try to impose our will onto the world.
Yeah.
And Shabbat is about recognizing that our true power comes from surrender.
Yeah.
Can we maybe look at some specific examples?
Yeah.
Because honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around how something as simple as, say, kindling fire, how that could be a form of like creation.
Sure. So with kindling fire, it's about transforming matter, taking wood, and creating something new, heat and light.
So it's an act of like harnessing and controlling energy.
Exactly.
But ultimately, Hashem is the source of that energy. So by refraining from kindling fire on Shabbat, we're acknowledging that we don't own or control those forces. They're a gift.
Right. And that principle applies to all 39 melachot. For example, take the prohibition against plowing. We're not just avoiding physical labor, we're letting the earth rest.
Trusting that Hashem will provide sustenance.
Yeah.
So it's about faith and surrender, but also a deep respect for the natural order of creation.
Beautifully put. And you know the Arizal, a prominent Kabbalist, taught that the 39 melachot, they're not randomly organized.
Okay.
They're grouped into 3 categories, each reflecting a different stage in the creative process.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. Tell me more about these 3 categories.
Okay, so the first 11 malachot correspond to the highest Sephirot Keter.
Okay.
These represent the intellectual and spiritual foundation of creation, like the initial spark of an idea.
Got it. So those are like the heady conceptual stages. What comes next?
The middle 23 malachot relate to the emotional attributes.
Okay.
This is where ideas take shape, where we start to see form and structure emerge.
So it's like moving from the architect's blueprint to the actual construction phase.
You got it. And finally, the last 5 correspond to malachot, final manifestation of the creative process, the finished product, so to speak.
So we have this incredible progression from the initial spark of divine inspiration to the shaping and molding of that energy to its ultimate expression in the physical world. And by refraining from each melachah on Shabbat, we're essentially retracing those steps, moving from the physical back towards the spiritual, returning to the source of creation itself.
And it's not just about retreating, it's about recognizing that even our creative endeavors are ultimately a partnership with something much greater than ourselves.
Just like Betzalel, he wasn't just a skilled craftsman, he was a conduit for that divine wisdom.
Exactly.
It's like he was this prototype for how we can approach our own work with humility and intention, with this deep awareness that we're co-creating with something much bigger than ourselves. This idea of the third temple as like the ultimate culmination of this creative cycle, it's almost too much to comprehend. What would it actually look like to have that kind of harmony between building and resting, between divine manifestation and divine peace?
That's a question that's captivated mystics and philosophers for centuries. And maybe, perhaps the answer lies not in a physical structure, but in a shift in consciousness.
So if we're talking about this like messianic consciousness, how do we bring more of that Shabbat spirit into our, everyday lives? I'm not building a Mishkan anytime soon, and even if I were, it wouldn't be done by Friday night.
Right, but it's not about like replicating the specifics, It's about cultivating that internal shift. Imagine approaching your work, no matter what it is, with that same awareness and intention that Betzalel brought to the Mishkan.
So instead of just diving headfirst into a task, I should take a moment to connect with the source of my creativity, almost like a mini meditation before getting started.
Exactly. Recognize that spark of inspiration, that ability to shape and mold as a gift. See your work, however mundane it might seem, as this collaboration with something much, much larger than yourself.
Almost like a prayer, but in action. There's something powerful in that idea, but how do we maintain that sense of connection when things get hectic, when we're, up against deadlines and juggling a million things? It's so easy to lose sight of the bigger picture.
That's where the practice of Shabbat itself comes in. It's that weekly reminder to step out of that frantic energy, to surrender control and just be. And that state of being, that's the essence we want to bring into our work.
So it's not just about working differently, it's about cultivating a different way of being. But isn't there a risk of becoming passive, of losing that drive to create and achieve?
Not at all. Think of it as like recharging, recalibration.
Yeah.
By consciously stepping back, by acknowledging that we're not the sole source of our creative power, we actually open ourselves up to like a deeper well of inspiration.
It's like we're tapping into a universal energy source instead of relying just on our own limited reserves.
Precisely. And that brings us right back to that tantalizing question about the third temple. Maybe it's not a physical structure that we're waiting for, but a state of collective consciousness, A world where that Shabbat awareness, that balance of building and resting, of action and surrender, permeates every aspect of our lives.
That's a beautiful vision. And if each act of refraining from malasha on Shabbat is a step towards that reality, then even the smallest choices we make throughout the week can contribute to that shift.
Exactly. Choosing to unplug for a few hours, to reconnect with loved ones, to appreciate the beauty around us, these are all ways of cultivating that Shabbat consciousness. And when we bring that awareness into our work, we transform it from just a means to an end into an act of co-creation with the divine.
Well, this deep dive has completely changed the way I think about the Mishkan, Shabbat, Ani creation itself. It's like this source has opened up this whole new dimension of understanding.
It's amazing how these ancient concepts still hold so much relevance for us today. They offer this blueprint for living more intentionally, for tapping into our creative potential in a way that's both fulfilling and aligned with a higher purpose.
So for all of you deep divers out there, I encourage you to take some time to reflect on these ideas. How can you bring more of that Shabbat spirit, that balance of creating and surrendering into your own lives?
Remember, every act of creation, when approached with intention and awareness, can become a step towards that ultimate harmony, that blending of building and resting, of divine manifestation and divine peace.
Until next time, deep divers, keep diving deep.